Well, Jimmy Fallon is being accused of creating a toxic work environment. But what about his stage environment? Welcome to Beyond the Screen, I'm Nate, and these are the top 10 times Jimmy Fallon made celebrities feel uncomfortable. Number 10. Cardi B. Cardi is well known for her quick wit and wicked throwing arm, but of course the world loves her for her lyrical talents. Jimmy clearly did not do any research on Cardi or what he could expect having her on as a guest. Cardi was in full, Cardi mode when she appeared on Jimmy's show in 2017. Jimmy welcomed her to the show, to which she replied with, "Thank you." Yeah, this left Jimmy speechless. As Cardi begins the interview, Jimmy just has this look of concern on his face. She speaks with a hard Bronx accent and is very animated in her expressions and movements. He clearly asks the questions that are written on his cue card rather than actually engaging with her. And when he does actually attempt to get on her level, which was just him mimicking her reactions, literally saying "brrr" is totally right. Jimmy just kind of went along with what she was saying. If you want to laugh, I suggest you watch the entire interview. It would take me a full 20 minutes just to go through the highlights. Number 9. Charles Barkley. Charades, the game that has destroyed thousands of relationships without a single word needing to be said. Jimmy loves to bring celebrities out on his show to play some strange games, but sometimes he likes to go with the classics. For this segment, the game was played by Ewan McGregor, Jeff Tweedy from the band Wilco, and Charles Barkley. Charles was on Jimmy's team and he suffered dearly for it. It turns out his skills as a charades detective are, non-existent. Jimmy attempts to get Charles to guess the title Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by performing elaborate kung fu moves and telling Charles that there were 4 words in the title. After 10 seconds of chops and kicks, Charles guesses confidently, "The Karate Kid." The buzzer sounds and the round is lost. This is when Jimmy literally yells at Charles Barkley in frustration, telling him that he was clearly a ninja and yelling, "I said 4 words!" Charles is stunned, sitting on the couch and trying to piece together how he's gonna break this man in half. When Charles stands to take his turn, he tells Jimmy that he is awful, getting the phrase "ice ice baby." He does everything that he can to relay it to Jimmy, but again, they fail. When Charles tells him the phrase, Jimmy screams in his face in confusion. Oh, who would have thought that it's difficult to guess something in charades? Seriously, I hate that game. Number 8. Rami Malek. Rami Malek is an incredible actor, being the star of the show Mr. Robot, as well as starring in several Hollywood hits like The Night at the Museum, and of course his Oscar-winning performance in Bohemian Rhapsody as the leader of Queen, Freddie Mercury. While making rounds to promote the film, he stopped by Jimmy Fallon's show for a little chit-chat. Initially, the interview is very pleasant, with Jimmy talking about how much he loved the movie and his performance in it. But then Jimmy pulls out the old Fallon charm and tells Rami that if he had access to his email or phone number, that he would have called him to tell him how good he was. Yeah, Rami then reminded Jimmy that he did in fact have all of that information. There is a brief moment of silence before Jimmy becomes lost for words. Rami is smooth and laughs this one off, but only a few moments later, he touches Jimmy's hands after spoiling a scene for the movie. Jimmy's reaction shifts from a great mood to, "Don't touch me." He looks like Rami just spit in his palm and gave him the old "how you doing?" Jimmy didn't explode on camera, but considering the allegations being brought against his show, he probably took a bath and sanitizer after this one. Number 7. Dakota Johnson. Jimmy has been the host of The Tonight Show since 2014. You would think in the almost 10 years that he's been on air that he would learn to let his guests speak. While doing promotions for the final entry in the 50 Shades franchise, she popped by The Tonight Show to chat with Jimmy Fallon. As the interview progresses, Dakota starts to tell Jimmy a story about her personal life that has nothing to do with the film. Throughout, he continues to interrupt her with little, "Oh, really? Wow, that's crazy." Eventually, she asks if she was allowed to speak, to which Jimmy said, "Yes, when you know what you are talking about, what are you saying?" He then abruptly moves on to his planned topics. The interview was short and filled with uncomfortable moments, but Dakota was a trooper and ignored this snub from Jimmy. Number 6. Martin Short and Steve Martin. Steve and Martin are comedy legends. Together they starred in live shows, films, and TV for over 30 years. Recently, they've had a little career resurgence thanks to the success of their show Only Girders in the Building. I'm not allowed to say the real title. It's available on Disney Plus now. While doing promotions for season 2 of the series, they stopped by Jimmy's show during the holidays. Instead of spreading Christmas cheer though, the interview became a roast of the three men. Steve and Martin were aiming most of their insults at Jimmy, telling him he had the easiest show to fall asleep to. One of the better roasts was Martin saying, "Jimmy, I love your career, it's like crypto. I don't understand it, but I admire it." Steve then chimed in telling Jimmy that his beard looked like a face mask with a hole in the middle. Jimmy giggles throughout the entire thing, but instead of clapping back, he just moves on to the next question. Every time they try to have fun with Jimmy, he gives them nothing back. This isn't the most uncomfortable interview in the world for Steve or Martin, but for Jimmy, this was not a proud moment in the show's history. Number 5, Joaquin Pheonex. Joaquin is known for being a bit of an eccentric character in general, but when it comes to his interviews, he is either calm, cool, and collected, or just completely out of his mind. In 2018, he appeared on The Tonight Show in a very good mood and ready to just kind of exist with Jimmy for a bit. The interview gets off to a rocky start when Jimmy reminds Joaquin of his last time on the show. The two had been trying to kick habits at the same time, to which Joaquin said, "Yours was way worse than mine." And after a pause, Jimmy says, "Oh, no, not that one, a different one, I meant soda," suggesting that maybe he was addicted to like no snow or something behind the scenes. But while people were scratching their heads, Joaquin began talking about video hypnosis, which is a technique used to stop inhaling the nasty tobacco. The conversation drifts to Jimmy thanking Joaquin for being on the show, and Joaquin attempts to say something nice but instead goes with, "Yeah, it is what it is," sips his coffee cup. The awkward laughing between these two is what made up a majority of the interview. That culminated in Jimmy telling Joaquin his name was too long to pronounce, and he replied by reminding Jimmy about the hundreds of people that he's met on the show and said, "Hey man, I believe in ya." Number 4, Pete Davidson. Pete made history as the youngest cast member on Saturday Night Live, but he's better known now as the guy who will steal your girl. In 2018, he made his late night debut sitting with the Batman star Robert Pattinson to discuss his engagement to Ariana Grande and his time on SNL. At one point, the conversation goes to Jimmy suggesting that the late night show stage may be the best place to get married. Davidson flipped the switch and asked, why so many people even cared about the situation. They weren't dating him, so there's no reason to be involved in the wedding. He then told Jimmy how weird it was that Donald Trump was being arrested for sleeping with people, meanwhile the media wanted to know where they were having their wedding. Throughout the interview, Davidson swears over and over again, causing Jimmy to just jokingly fire him from the show. Luckily, the awkward exchange was not a real ban of any kind, and Davidson returned every time he's dated someone new. 27 times in 5 years. I'm just kidding. It's 28. Number 3, Nicole Kidman. In 2016, Nicole Kidman popped by the old couch and desk set to talk about her upcoming film, Lion. However, Jimmy had other ideas. From the moment that she enters the room, he laughs nervously. As the interview progresses, Jimmy shares that the pair had actually met before, to which Kidman said, "Oh, I remember." It turns out that Nicole had actually had a crush on Jimmy. 2 years prior to the interview, Nicole actually attempted to go on a date with him, having a mutual friend set them up. But the late night show host blew his chance. According to Nicole, she showed up at his house where he just didn't talk to her and he played video games for an hour before she finally gave up and left. Jimmy claimed that he was unaware that this was an actual date, but judging by his actions, he probably thought it was a play date. His mom set up or something. Doesn't matter if you knew that or not, if Nicole Kidman knocks on your door, you pause the fortnight, man. The overall interview was fairly uncomfortable, but this was a moment that truly made us cringe. Number 2, Blake Shelton. Having someone look you in the eyes and sing to you is just so uncomfortable, especially on late night television. In 2017, Blake was on Jimmy's show to discuss his upcoming gig as the musical guest on Saturday Night Live. He kicks off the interview by heckling Blake over the cover of his 11th studio album, Texoma Shore. What started as lighthearted humor turned into full-on roasting before Blake tries to move things along. He was there to talk about SNL, but before Jimmy gets a chance to discuss the soundtrack that he's gonna play, he sings a broken version of one of Blake's songs, just right to his face. He even gets the audience to clap along while he butchers the lyrics. The entire time, which is a full minute, Blake looks extremely uncomfortable, just shaking his head and waiting for Jimmy to stop. When he finally does, Jimmy moves to a different topic, but the singer is visibly annoyed with not just the lack of knowledge for his lyrics, but the fact that Jimmy was singing in a hard cowboy accent. Eventually, Blake asks if Jimmy could just interview him already, finally getting things back on track. And at number 1, Donald Trump. Donald Trump's interview with Jimmy Fallon will go down in the history books as the most awkward moment ever recorded. In 2016, while still campaigning for president, he appeared on The Tonight Show to discuss the future and his upcoming rally. Jimmy took advantage of the fact that Donald may be the president the next time that they spoke, asking if he could mess Donald's up hair while they're both still civilians. At first, Donald looks beyond annoyed, and like he may just snap at Jimmy right on camera. The audience roars with cheers though, which really seemed to shift his tone. He lets Jimmy ruffle his hair, only to reveal that he either got hair plugs or maybe he is just always wearing a wig. His hair looks like Jimmy Neutrons for a moment that went viral online. Despite him winning the election, this interview, and of course the photos that came from it, were the only thing on anyone's mind, and probably the only thing he's still remembered for now. Those are the times that Jimmy made his guests hecka uncomfortable. Would you like to see a part 2? Because there are so many interviews to choose from. Let us know by dropping a like on this video, and if you haven't already, please follow the channel. It would mean a lot to us, and we pump out celebrity content every day. Thanks for stopping beyond the screen, and we'll see you next time.